Hi, I'm Jeff Gorman, owner of Creative Computing, Princeton's only Apple specialist store, located at 423 Wall Street across from the Princeton Airport. Welcome to our show, Apple Talk by Creative Computing. Here we discuss everything from products to software, even technical issues. Today I'd like to start with talking about the new iPad. Apple's had a phenomenal time with the new iPad. Sales are through the roof. They sold over 3 million iPads during the first week. It's the biggest launch of a technology product ever. It significantly eclipses the launch of any Android device. Android's often considered a competitor because when it first came out, it was on phones and was competing with the iPhone. But the iPad significantly eclipsed anything ever offered by Android. Other manufacturers even are trying to get on the Apple bandwagon. RIM, the BlackBerry makers, are hiring an iOS developer in order to write a mobile device management program so that BlackBerry users who use their software can manage iPhones, iPads, as well as BlackBerries. It's starting to turn over there. I personally predict that RIM doesn't have much longer. The HP CEO coincidentally said that HP needs to be more like Apple, more disruptive, cause disruption in technology and get their products noticed. And Microsoft even released a guide to help developers port iOS apps to Windows 8. And in some cases, they're even paying their developers to port their apps. Just shows who's leading the pack here. About the new iPad, surveys from a bunch of major organizations indicate 40% of younger people expect to buy a new iPad in the next 3 months. Half of existing iPad owners expect to upgrade. 35% of those already own an iPad 2, although it's not totally clear from the surveys if people are replacing their iPad 2s with the new iPad or are just getting an additional iPad. But it's still a very large percentage. 36%, it's amazing how close these things are, plan to get the 4G version, take advantage of the speed out on the cellular network. And the main reason for the upgrade is the Retina display. The second main reason is the faster processor that handles the Retina display and makes all your apps run just more zippy. The iPad battery. There has been a lot of controversy surrounding the iPad battery. Sometimes the battery says it's at 100% full when it's not quite there. What really happens is the iPad will get to 100% while it's plugged in and you're there using it. The power will trickle off a little while it's plugged in and using it. So it might get down to, I don't know, 99, 98%, and then it will automatically bring itself up to 100. So the actual power level will go up and down a little bit while you're using your iPad plugged in. The indicator says 100, even though it's not so because of that, it's not necessarily 100%, but the indicator says so. It's easier than having people confused by the constant fluctuation of the power indicator. My opinion on this whole thing being a controversy and whether or not is it exactly 100%, we've all been using batteries for so long. You know how they work. You know, they die. The flashlight dies. A few minutes later, you can get a glimmer of light. No one's really ever sure exactly how much power is in a battery. And rechargeables, like are in the iPad and every other device that uses rechargeables, they charge, they drain, they charge, they drain. Apple didn't reinvent the battery. I think that people should lay off on that one a little bit and just let it go. Some useful statistics relating to the battery. It takes about 5.5 hours to charge the new iPad. It's about 90 minutes longer than the iPad 2. And in practical use, you get about 6 hours, just under 6 hours of use using the iPad pretty heavily. You know, the screen's really bright, you're watching video, you're on the network, all of that. You'll get just about 6 hours of use. The iPad 2, you would get just over 7. It's pretty close. I mean, if you are, in fact, using your iPad so much during the day that that's actually a problem, the odds are you have a chance to plug it in and power it up some. Another topic that's gotten a lot of controversy of late is heat on the new iPad. There have been a lot of murmurings on the internet that say it runs very, very hot. My personal iPad that you saw in our previous episode, I've used it, I haven't noticed any heat whatsoever. It feels cool to the touch. At our store, our demo iPads that are on all day do get warm. They're not warm to the point that they burn your hand or anything. I mean, it's warm. The computer gets warm. You know, the TV gets warm. Lots of things that you use power get warm. It's by no means unreasonable. It's not going to burn you. It's not a big deal. People just look for the slightest possible thing. You know, Apple's held to this standard of perfection that nobody else is even expected to meet. Your Samsung Galaxy gets hot, nobody cares. Your iPad, you find the slightest little thing. I just want to say that the iPad's heat is not in any way annoying. And just separately, comparisons have shown that the new iPad is within 1 or 2 degrees of other tablets like the Samsung Galaxy. And under maximum load for an hour, a couple of tests have shown that the Galaxy is actually even hotter. Although again, because everyone likes to pick on Apple, whenever there's the slightest reason, you don't read anything about the Galaxy's heat problem. With a couple weeks behind us, on the new iPad, the most popular feature of the new iPad is the Retina display. People just love that resolution. And it's really sharp. I've seen it. It's amazingly sharp. I really didn't expect to care, but now that I have one, I'm like, wow. The second most popular is the A5X processor. And you can't see it, but you certainly feel it. I think that if more people were technically on top of things, they would know that the 1 gig of RAM is pretty up there on their list of popularity. They just don't know how to recognize that. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of the people who are saying that the processor is their favorite thing are really talking about the RAM and just don't know. And another feature that's proven very interesting is that if you use the new iPad as a hotspot, just set it up as a hotspot, put it down on the table, it'll work for about 23 hours before the battery goes. That's amazing. Other devices like the Motorola, I think it's Motorola, the MiFi, and a couple others that are out there, you get an average of 2 to 3 hours of router support. First 23 on the new iPad. It's an amazing thing. Next, I would like to talk a little bit about Mountain Lion. Mountain Lion, as you all know, is coming in the summer at some point. I don't think they've announced an exact date. It'll be available from Apple directly as a download. There'll be a link for it on our webpage. Check it out. Plus, then Apple knows we sent you. We'd like that. The developer preview is out now, and I'd like to just talk about a couple of features that are going to be in it or people think are going to be in it. Based on developers looking at the code and finding random graphics and the like, it appears that it's going to coincide with a number of new Macs having Retina displays like the new iPad. I'd like to see that. I mean, I in no way can complain about my current Mac, but a Retina display would have to be amazing. If I'm as impressed as I am with the iPads, I'm going to like that on my new Mac. The developers have seen mentions of it in the code and some high-quality graphics in certain apps. And again, it's just a developer preview, but the odds are high. And if they do come out with a Retina display, it's likely to be on the MacBook Pros and the Airs, and we'll, of course, have them. This also, another thing, is it would move the bar even further for any other computer to consider itself a competitor to the Macintosh. Right now, you use OS X, and your whole computing experience is very, very smooth. You use Windows, you're just lucky to boot. The Mac provides you the best of everything, and add super high-quality video. Wow, that's all I can say. I'd like to see movies on there. Your own iMovies playing in HD on a Retina display will look fantastic. It's going to have some other features of Mountain Lion. The Messages app. They're combining iChat, FaceTime, and iMessage like you have on your iPhone, your iPad, all in one. So from your computer and or your iOS devices, you'll be able to use FaceTime, iChat, text, and you can even now you can text with iChat to a cell phone. This will all be incorporated into Messages on Mountain Lion. Should be very nice. Of course, computer to computer, the other person needs a Mac too, but they should have one anyway. Reminders is going to be on the Mac. It's an improvement to the to-do list that you see on the side of iCal, and it possibly explains why they never really sync the to-do list well with the iOS devices. Reminders lets you set up reminders for whatever you want. It can remind you on a regular basis, one time, whatever. And in the case of devices with GPS, such as the iPhone, it can even remind you when you get to a certain location. And reminders, of course, will sync with iCloud, like everything else on Mountain Lion. The Notification Center, that thing that pops down from your iOS device, will show you things that you have to do, appointments, messages, emails, whatever else that you need to be notified about, reminders. The Mac is going to have the Notification Center come up along the right side of the screen. Very nice. AirPlay mirroring. Ever doing a presentation with your Mac? You're sitting there with your Mac on the table. There's some long wire going to a projector across the table. Now, AirPlay mirroring. Your Mac doesn't need to be connected to anything, and it can display its video somewhere else. Great for a presentation. It's also nice if, say at home, you have an Apple TV and you have your MacBook. You're working on your MacBook, it's great. You happen to need more screen for a moment or for a little while, you're working on a big project. You hit AirPlay, you send your Mac to your Apple TV, and you can have your Mac on your television and on your computer. So you can use your TV as an additional screen whenever you want. Very, very nice. And again, nobody else has any of this. One more detail to tell you about from Mountain Lion that I'm aware of is Gatekeeper. Gatekeeper is a setting that you can turn on your Mountain Lion Mac, and you can restrict apps from landing on your computer, meaning that in its most restrictive setting, all apps have to come from the App Store. And I'm sure Apple likes that one. All apps have to come from the App Store. If it's not from the App Store, the Mac will not let it be installed on your hard drive. You can't drag it there, nothing. It won't come from the internet, web browser, email, anything. You can expand that a little bit and allow it to come from the Mac Store and people you trust or anywhere like you can today. But the point is, if you turn it on a somewhat restrictive setting, no virus, Trojan, not that there's really any out there, are going to wind up on your Mac without your knowledge. The system will guarantee this. Highly recommended, and a very nice Mountain Lion feature. I would like to next talk about a new device from Logitech, the UE Air Speaker. What UE means, I'm not really sure. But what it is a speaker that can be an AirPlay device. So you can take your music, your iPad, whatever, iTunes, and send the content, the music, to this speaker. You can put the speaker outside, you can put it inside. It's got 2 tweeters, woofers. My point isn't so much about the speaker itself. My point is that having an AirPlay music device, akin to the Apple TV, lets you send your music to other places that you can't currently. Right now, you can buy the Airport Express, which I believe is one of Apple's most useful, most flexible devices. The thing does everything. But if you have, say, you want to have music somewhere, the current method is you have to get an Airport Express and then some sort of, portable stereo or regular stereo or something else. This will take the Airport Express out of the loop and let you have music where you want it. I predict it's the first of many AirPlay devices that can receive audio or video from your iTunes and other sources of content. I want to see a lot of that. I expect to see a lot of that really making its way out there. All right. My next topic is the iPhone, iPad, and Siri. There's been a lot said about Siri. I read some surveys in preparation for this show. About 1/3 of users who have Siri use it daily. The most popular use are text, dictation, and searches. I've used my Siri like in my car. It's very nice. You receive a text message, you can say to Siri, read my text, it reads your text, and then you can say reply, speak your reply, it confirms your reply, it sends your reply. It lets you have a text conversation fully with Siri, not needing to touch the phone. The hands-free laws that are everywhere, this seems to meet that to me. I'm not sure what would happen. It seems like it's also a whole, what's the court going to say? But it clearly is hands-free texting. And I think it's very nice. Dictation is good. If you're writing an email, you can speak and say whatever it is. And searching is, of course, very nice. And it's Siri's default behavior. If you say something that Siri doesn't recognize, it will do a web search for it and give you the results. I just read, too, that ESPN has made a deal with Apple that's allowing Siri to be expanded into sports. Now, sports themselves, I'm not really a sports fanatic, but what's cool about this is they've allowed phrases such as New York Yankees to be recognized by Siri instead of New York and Yankees. That gives Siri more capabilities of understanding. You can say to Siri something along the line of, who's winning the Yankee game? And Siri can come back with, the score is 10-5. Yankees are winning. Or, when is the next Yankees game? And Siri can come back with, next Tuesday, at Yankee Stadium. Would you like to search for tickets? The key thing here is that Apple is expanding Siri's recognition capabilities and giving it more functions. I think they're going to do quite a lot with this. Right now, they still call Siri a beta app. People still, like everything else that Apple does, try to pick apart the slightest flaw. Voice recognition, up to recently, voice recognition in computer science has mostly gone towards recognizing the voice, just figuring out what the person said. Voices are hard. We all have different accents and different expressions and idioms and so on. Siri's pretty good at voice recognition. The next focus is, now that you recognize the voice, what do you do with it? Siri's made a very good first attempt at it. It's still beta. I predict voice would be beta for a number of years to come. There's just so much involved in computer science to really do a lot with voice recognition, but I think Apple should be very proud of Siri. My next topic is iOS 5.1. More than half the devices that are eligible to run iOS 5.1 upgraded within the first 5 days. That's an amazing rate of OS adoption. Only Apple gets that. Look at other platforms. How many people are still running Windows XP? Lots and lots. I didn't run it in the first place, but lots of people are still running it. Even though Windows has had Vista and now Windows 7 since, people just don't want to upgrade. They're all afraid. Yet on Apple devices, everyone upgrades almost the second they can because experience is it all works and they get a zillion new features that are just phenomenal. You can't go wrong. And you think of smartphones. Everyone updates. People buy new phones to update the iOS. How many people have bought a new phone just to get a new version of Android? My prediction, 3. Apple had been criticized with this for, at some point, requiring you to connect your iOS device to a computer in order to get an update to iOS. They fixed this, or addressed this with iOS 5, but it is worth pointing out that Apple has had iOS devices for a very long time, well before anybody else did, and well before technology really supported doing upgrades over the air. Android came out. Sure, Android has always been able to be upgraded over the air, but it's only been out like a year and a half. iOS does it now too. And I think it's just not fair to pick on Apple for having had the requirement of a USB upgrade. There was nothing else, and now they don't. It wasn't very unreasonable. My next topic, Microsoft. Microsoft is trying to have the Windows Phone adopted, and they're having a contest. They call it Smoked by Windows Phone. You bring your smartphone to a Microsoft store, and they have some tests that you can run. I'm sure they've pre-picked these tests, so Windows wins a lot, but doesn't always win. And you do a task, a Twitter post, or whatever else they have, and if your phone beats their phone, you're entered in a drawing, which they guarantee will have very few entries, for a Windows notebook of some sort and a free Windows Phone. If they win, they still give you a discount or a free trade-in of your smartphone for a Windows Phone. I wouldn't trade anyway. I bet it can get a virus faster than my iPhone. But I think you're better off still with your smartphone. And I find it interesting that Microsoft used to be the biggest company everywhere, has to do whatever they can do to try and combat Apple. While we're on the new iPhone, rumors for the new iPhone. Rumors are currently that the iPhone will be out in fall, probably in October. In my opinion, I tend to skip every other model. Right now, I'm using an iPhone 4. I did not get a 4S. I will get a 5. If something super amazing comes out, I would, go right for the 5S if there is one, or whatever's next too. But for the moment, my general tendency has been to skip every other model. So I'm excited to get the iPhone 5 in the fall. Features that rumors are that it has or doesn't have. It has LTE 4G, the same cellular capability that the new iPad has. I find this very likely. The iPad has it, why wouldn't the phone? And lots of phone vendors are gearing up for it. Even Sprint has announced their 4G network. They're just waiting to turn it on. Why they're waiting, I'm not sure, but it's there. AT&T and Verizon have one as well. And I'd like to see it. Supposedly it's really, really fast. One company that does analysis for the cell phone industry expects a 10-fold growth in 4G phones this year, mostly fueled by the iPhone 5. To get 10-fold, mostly fueled by the iPhone 5, that's not coming out till October, is really quite the prediction and quite the indication of the popularity of Apple's devices, including the iPhone. Some code that has leaked out indicates that with the 4G, FaceTime will actually work on the cellular network instead of just on the Wi-Fi network. I'd like to see that, especially if it's fully integrated into iMessage, which is likely. I think it'll be a very nice thing. Another rumor that's with it is a smaller dock connector. Someone told me a little round thing, kind of akin shape-wise to the headphone jack. I hope that's not the case. So many people have devices and chargers and all of these things. They're not going to make the phone smaller. There's clearly room for the current jack. I hope that they don't go with a smaller, different jack. I'd like all these devices to work. And I'm also not sure, I mean, it's 30 pin, but what does it really need? It needs power to come in through there. It needs data to go in and out. And it needs control to go in and out, like next song or whatever, depending on the device that you plug it in on. To me, that's 8, maybe 10 wires. Right now, they have 30. I just don't know why they would need to change this connector, and hopefully they won't. 2 more rumors out there regarding the iPhone 5 and the screen. One rumor is Apple's going to continue with the 3.5-inch screen that they have now. And another rumor is that they're going to go with a 4.6-inch screen. The thing with the 4.6-inch screen that comes up for discussion is it might be a little bit too big for one-handed use. If you're holding it and you can't reach your thumb across, you have to go with 2 hands. Apple might not like that. But on the other side of that, a lot of the main use of the phone is becoming more and more using the screen, using data services, and less use of the voice connection. Customers are demanding a bigger screen. I don't know. In my opinion, I would like the bigger screen. Not that I find the 3.5 particularly annoying, but I'm all for more screen. As long as I can still hold it in my hand and put it up next to my head. If it's this big and I can't, like the iPad, that's not going to work. It needs to fit in one hand and be able to be held up and used as a telephone. And just interestingly, one of our distributors we buy our cases and accessories from has the iPhone 5 listed as a category for the products. I didn't look. I just noticed this yesterday. I didn't look to see what was listed for iPhone 5, like if there was a case or something, but I just thought it was interesting that it was on the website. And then my final thing about the iPhone 5s, Apple recently got a patent for a haptic touch interface. Haptic touch is when you touch the phone, giving it a command of some sort, the phone gives you some sort of physical feedback, like a vibration usually. The haptic feedback up to this point has generally meant that the whole device vibrates. Apple has patented haptic feedback in tiny little spots, so the spot you touch on the screen can give you a vibration type of feedback or some other physical feedback. That would be interesting. I'd like to see that, especially if you're using the phone in a situation where you can't necessarily look at it. Of course, none of us use it while driving, and I'm highly against that, but there are times when you want to touch it and you can't look at it. It'd be nice to have some physical feedback like that, and that's what haptic feedback is, and Apple just got a patent on I don't know what the right word is, very tiny haptic feedback. My last topic of the day is the Apple TV. The interface on the new Apple TV is different than it was previous. This is on the new Apple TV and available by a software update on the previous Apple TV. The interface now looks more akin to iOS devices. The interface has bigger icons, but there's icons on the screen, and you can point to them with the remote and do whatever the icon is for. There's a rumor that a previous Apple engineer said that Steve nixed that interface. Could be, as Apple gets more and more iOS devices, they're taking their interfaces more and more towards the idea of the square icons that do everything. Even on OS X on your Macintosh, you can go to Launchpad, and see all of your apps looking just like they do on the iOS devices. Now, the Apple TV has an interface like that. Now, about whether or not this design was rejected by Steve or not, one quote I heard was that without Steve, there's no one there to reject bad design. I don't think that's true. Design is a very collaborative effort. What you start off with an idea for a device, and you say, I want it to work this way, and you have a meeting with your design team, and in Steve's case, I'm sure it was a bunch of engineers and a bunch of people in marketing and the like, and they came up with a broad idea. Then the marketing and engineering people went and came up with something that kind of matched Steve's description. They would show it to him, and he would like this and hate that, and finally they would come out with the interface that met everybody's needs. Design is very collaborative. I also read that Steve initially said no to almost everything, and in some cases he came back around to liking things after he got to understanding them or seeing the problems with others' points of view. So my guess is that this interface that Apple came out with for the new Apple TV did have some influence from Steve. And I think it's also good that you move away from the text interface more to a graphic interface. I think that's good, especially on a television. And younger people who can't necessarily read yet can get a little more out of the Apple TV, help them rent a few more movies, and I think it makes sense. All right, and that's it for today's show. I would just like to quickly recap what we went over. We talked about iPad sales over 3 billion, other companies trying to compete with Apple. We talked about the battery and the various controversies about the battery, and I don't agree with that. We talked about the heat and various controversies about that. I also don't agree with those. We talked about the most popular features on the iPad, the new Retina display and the processor, which I think is really the RAM people are talking about, and the hotspot function, how good it is. We talked about Mountain Lion and a lot of the features that it has that are upcoming. I'm sure there's going to be a zillion more that we don't even know about yet. I can't wait. I'm always there. Day one, I will have Mountain Lion. We talked about the AirPlay devices, the Logitech speaker specifically, but AirPlay devices in general, which I think will be more prolific. We talked about Siri usage on the iPad and the iPhone, and an idea of what we can expect from Siri going forward. We talked about iOS 5.1, the quick rate of adoption of iOS 5.1 and every OS that Apple comes out with, compared it with other OSs like Windows. We talked about We talked about Microsoft's Smoke by a Windows Phone contest and how Microsoft and other companies even are trying their best to come up with a way to compete with Apple. If really if one of them could make a good device worth using, then there'd be competition. We talked about new iPhone rumors and what's coming in the fall, hopefully. I can't wait. And as soon as I get it, you'll see it here on this show first. We talked about various things on the new iPhone, and we talked about the Apple TV and the change in interface and how it's headed more towards iOS. Again, that's it for today. Thank you very much for watching Apple Talk by Creative Computing. See you next time. Thank you for watching Apple Talk by Creative Computing. If you would like to suggest a topic or ask a question on our show, please email appletalk@creativecomputing.com. Please visit Creative Computing for all your Apple needs, sales, or service. We are located at 423 Wall Street across from the Princeton Airport on Route 206. You can call us at 609-683-3MAC. Visit us online at www.creativecomputing.com. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, join our circle on Google+. We look forward to seeing you. Mention our Apple Talk TV show to any sales staff and receive 10% off accessories.